though. We're back in the episode.
We're back in
What
the
episode is this?
6?
Is
Yes,
it?
it is 6.
6?
6.
Oh my God. I thought it was 5.
No, it's 6.
Oh, well, here we are.
Here we go, episode 6.
And we're actually talking about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I feel like it's very, like, on trend. I feel like a lot of people are talking about this at the moment. And it's all about the gender differences in ADHD.
Between how men and women and how it presents. I think it's really interesting as well because I feel like recently we've actually been speaking to so many different people and men with ADHD and talking about it and realising how different the two actually are.
Yeah, because we were speaking to a guy at work and it's just interesting how, as it when like my brother definitely has ADHD, undiagnosed. He probably won't be listening to this, but he 100% has it. And like he was hyperactive, misbehaved at school, just constantly causing trouble, couldn't stay focused. And I feel like I showed none of those symptoms. I don't know about you, but I really don't think I had anything like that when I was younger.
No, I never had anything like that. I wasn't like a naughty schoolboy, you know, jumping off the walls and struggling to sit down and things like that. For me, it was very much like being a daydreamer, and when I was younger I was always being called like gifted. You know, like my reading ability was like so ahead for my age and things like that, and it was always like, oh, she's so gifted and things like that. And it'd be like, but she doesn't apply herself. And so that was what I always got, and so I never really thought that I had ADHD because I never struggled in that sense.
But you just assume that if you're not getting kicked out of school, being really naughty and not getting your grades, that you ultimately can't possibly have ADHD. And we've grown up thinking that, which is why now so many women are getting diagnosed. But it's interesting because one of my friends was going through the diagnosis process recently, and she didn't have like loads of ADHD traits as a child. I think she only had a few. And then they didn't diagnose her with ADHD in adulthood. But I feel like I probably didn't really tick a lot of the boxes in childhood. But I feel like maybe you have a few. You
have to tick a few, because I remember going through the assessment and having to do like the forms about childhood and things like that. And I think because ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition, to be diagnosed with it, you have to have shown some symptoms in childhood. But I think it's more of just, you know, the understanding has changed, and what maybe we think is, oh, we didn't have ADHD symptoms as a child. We did, but it's just we didn't know that it was ADHD.
What do you think were some of the symptoms you probably showed in childhood?
I think a lot of it was a lot of problems around emotional dysregulation. And, you know, I'd say I was definitely more inattentive. I am hyperactive more now as I'm older, but when I was younger, it was definitely more the inattentive, you know, like forgetting school books at home all the time, like forgetting homework, being really anxious all the time and not being able to control my emotions and things like that, having tantrums, and, you know, that almost like people pleaser element of it. I never really had the like disruptiveness that you would stereotypically see with ADHD.
I feel like something for me that I look back and think was such an ADHD symptom, but I didn't know, was like rearranging my room all the time.
Oh, I did that constantly.
But like literally like twice a week. And I'd sit in my room and I'd be sat there in my new room and I'd move my wardrobe and I'd sit there and I'd be like, oh my God, I feel so accomplished, I'm so happy.
It'd be like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm literally like 14 years old trying to lift my bed around, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like to my nan, look, I've moved my room around. I'd be so
oh
happy.
My God, again.
And then I came home from school and my nan had moved it back to where it was before.
But it's like that novelty seeking, isn't it? That one little thing changes and it feels like you're in a completely different room and you're constantly chasing that novelty. And looking back, I would never have even thought that would have been an ADHD symptom. But I think for me, it probably was more the rejection sensitivity thing that really affected me, which is ultimately emotional dysregulation. But I remember like the thought of doing a drama class and being in front of so many people, and I just thought, I was just really shy. But looking back, I think that I was always the one in the class who was the most shy.
Yeah.
Like, I would have done anything to not go to drama class or go to PE
Yeah.
and be in front of people and be bad at something. And I think that's me at the time. Yeah, maybe I thought, oh, I'm just really shy. And I don't think it was that. I think it probably was emotional dysregulation, not being able to deal with people looking at me and thinking that I'm not good at something.
Yeah, I feel like I was the opposite. I was like,
Really?
I was like a pathological liar when I was in school, and it's like just making up lies because it's the novelty. It's like the dopamine. It's like the attention of it. It's like
Oh my
making
God,
up
is that an
lies.
ADHD thing?
And I'd be pathologically lying about things when I was in school. It's like the most stupidest things as well. Like nothing that.
Is that an ADHD thing?
I feel like I've seen it somewhere.
Oh my God, I was so bad for that at school.
It'd be random things as well. It'd be like, oh, I'm related to this like
Oh my God,
celebrity or something.
I can't
like
believe
that.
we've never spoken about this. I once said that I got on Britain's Got Talent and got through to like the one, and I was like, yeah, like I met Simon Cowell, but like I remember in my head that I actually then believed my lies. And I got so immersed in it.
And it's like, oh yeah, this is just common knowledge about me, but it's actually not even a real thing that's happened.
I can't believe we're only just talking about this now. That's so interesting.
But I think it must be like a novelty thing, seeking thing.
Well, it's daydreaming in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're creating like this whole imaginary thing up in your head, and you're like almost in that character, and it probably feels good to be in that character that you're creating.
And get attention from it as
Exactly.
well. Like you talk about this and then everyone's like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
it's like this thing. And so it's a way of almost, you're people pleasing.
No way, that's so
attention
interesting.
from it.
I remember when I was at school and when I was pretty young, and I had created this whole like imaginary, this world underneath my garden, and I had all these little people in there, and they were all doing things and underneath my garden, and I'd created this thing in my head, and I remember it so vividly, and I used to sit and think about this imaginary world that lived underneath my garden. Did you do things like that? I feel like I was had such a strong imagination.
Yeah, I definitely think I would genuinely. I remember I'd sit awake in bed. I wouldn't sleep because I'd be like thinking about different scenarios and like what would happen if this happened and what I'd say. And like,
I
like
still do that now, to be
I
honest.
do it all the time. I'd be like in bed. It'd be like I'm thinking about like going into the class and like the teacher says this and I'd turn around and I'd get up in front and I'd do this.
And then they go in the next day and absolutely none of that happens.
Oh
yeah.
God. The things you do as a kid is like just for attention, or like you're dreaming it up. Is just so embarrassing when you think. But every kid does it. But
I think people with ADHD do it worse.
Yeah.
In fact, there was something that I saw here, and it was that little boys with ADHD climb the walls, whereas little girls with ADHD climb the walls inside their own heads. And I think that's actually just the main difference, isn't it?
It is, because I think the reason there's so much misunderstanding around ADHD in women is because ADHD, when it was like first discovered, historically all the research has been done on boys.
Yeah.
And ADHD was actually seen as a boy's condition. You would never see girls
No.
being diagnosed with ADHD, but it's because boys with ADHD, stereotypically, I'm not saying that all boys with ADHD are like this, but stereotypically, you know, the symptoms of it are so external, whereas for girls the symptoms are so internalized, and so that's why it gets missed completely.
Yeah.
Because, you know, girls get diagnosed with anxiety and then boys get diagnosed with ADHD, and it's just because you've got the external versus internal factors.
Yeah. And also, women and girls are so good at masking it because it's okay for a boy, like, it's okay for boys to be really naughty.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it was almost normal for my brother to be naughty, but if I'd have behaved in the way my brother was doing, that would be so wrong.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have probably behaved like my brother anyway, because it's definitely more internal for me. But I think that we want to be perfect and we want to be successful in our careers, so we spend our life masking, ultimately.
Pretending to be something. I always remember in school, like when you think back to being in the classroom, it's always the naughty boys and, you know, the boys being like the class clown. Do you remember like you'd have a naughty boy and the teacher would put the naughty boy like next to you because you were more quiet, and they'd be like, oh, well, you're going to sit next to this person, and so it's going to like stop you from misbehaving, and then I'd just be sat at my desk next to this like boy
literally.
trying to get all the attention.
I feel like there was always that boy in class, wasn't there, who was just absolutely crazy.
There's always one.
There's
isn't
always
it?
one, yeah. But you feel bad for them. Like I feel bad for my brother that he behaved in the way that he did because his was more external. So although we had the exact same diagnosis, although he hasn't, actually been diagnosed, but he definitely has it. That he was almost had more of a discriminated against more because he was the naughty boy at school, because he, would act up in class and didn't do well at school. He's almost suffered more not more, but I feel like we go on about how much women suffer because they haven't been diagnosed. But then I also think my brother's gone through his whole life being externally ADHD.
It's two different types of suffering, though. I think, for the men with ADHD, it's like you've got the external pressure of it and people judging you and people being like, oh, this kid's up at what have his parents done?
Exactly.
All of this.
Yeah.
Whereas for women, majority of the suffering, I think, is internalized. I would say it's like we've put the suffering on ourselves. That's not putting anything down, but it's, the shame and the guilt and trying to be a certain way is a lot of the suffering we go through is like this self-imposed, pressures that we've put on us to fit into society. But then again, I think as well, obviously there's a lot of societal pressures for men, but I definitely feel like there are a lot more for women in terms of 100%. Having to fit in. Like for a guy who's very outspoken and says things like are seen as charismatic, and you can be like impulsive, but you're called like spontaneous and fun. Whereas if you're a girl who's like outspoken, it's like you're too much. If you're spontaneous and like impulsive, you're wild and you're off the rails. So it's like the differences.
It's
between...
so true. And I always think like there's always that person in your office as well who is a guy who's like really loud, slightly obnoxious, says things that they probably shouldn't say, but gets away with it. But can you imagine if a girl did that? You would just get sacked, or you like literally everybody all the girls in the office would absolutely hate you. But if you're a guy that you do it, you're a lad and it's funny and everyone's laughing at you. It's
this
interesting.
is what I always hated as well, because when I was younger, I am quite, I'm not going to say I'm too much, but I am quite I will say things that I probably shouldn't say. I don't really have much of a filter. And I'll be loud and all of this sort of stuff when I'm out. And then I always get like weird looks from other women, or the boys being like, oh, but you're just such a lad, and all of this stuff. And it's like, so why is it that I have to fit into a box? Why is it that being a woman is, be quiet, when you laugh, you just giggle and
can't swear.
You can't swear. It's you have to be ladylike.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not ladylike, but it's difficult,
but
isn't it?
You get judgment from both sides, though, because you get the girls who look at you and you get called like a pick-me girl.
Yeah.
And then you get the guys looking at you thinking like, oh, I wouldn't want her to be my girlfriend because
she's too loud and
she's too loud
rude
and all of this sort of stuff. So it's like you can't win on either side.
No. And I look back at sort of exams as well, and this was a big thing for me why I also didn't think I had ADHD, because I thought that ADHD meant that you were the person at university who was staying up throughout the middle of the night, drinking Monsters, doing trying to finish a dissertation for tomorrow, which a lot of people with ADHD do that. And I think that was probably maybe more you.
Not really. I think at uni it changed. So first and second year, I didn't go to any lectures. I think in my whole time at uni, I went to 10 lectures or something ridiculous like that.
Really?
I never went to lectures, but it was because I had so much anxiety around it. It was more of the having to get up and sit in these big lecture halls and all the overwhelming information that I just never went. And so first and second year, I didn't really do much. And then when it got into third year and I was like, shit, things are getting serious now. If I actually want to get a good grade, I've got to lock in. And I almost hyper focused on it. I wasn't sat up drinking Monsters all night, but I was very much hyper focused on it for maybe the last 6 months of uni, thinking that I need to do well. And I did exactly the same in A levels. I completely messed up my AS levels in year 12,
really?
And then year 13 I was like, I've really
You've
got to
gotta do it, yeah.
got to do it, and would be like overly organised. I'm talking that my whole room would be
Same.
covered in
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes, A3 mind maps,
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
everything. I think it was more of a way of
Control.
of
Yeah.
like overly.
Because over preparing, because the ADHD brain is so chaotic that you almost feel like you need to over prepare because you're scared that you might leave it till the very last minute. And yeah, I remember like I would be revising for an exam, but it was like 6 months away, and I was just obsessed and over prepared for everything. And I think I thought that was an OCD trait, and that definitely couldn't be an ADHD thing. But now I know that it was actually just a way of me trying to control my ADHD.
And I think now as well, like I always, when I was going through the assessment process and thinking about, I'm not disorganised, I'm not any of this, I'm actually over-organised. I think it's overcompensating of trying to like organise your life. And it's like, I don't really miss appointments and things like that. But then also if you look at my phone calendar, literally everything is put into my phone calendar so that I don't forget it. If I'm going for drinks with a friend, I have to put it in my phone calendar because my brain can't hold the information.
Overwhelmed.
It's overwhelming. So everything is externalised, writing it down.
I think if someone looked at my to-do lists, they would be like horrified at some of the things that are on there, because it is the most simple things, like put my clothes away, which for a lot of people wouldn't be on their to-do list because they can see their clothes, they know to put them away, but I have to have it there, otherwise they will just stay there. Like water plants is on my to-do list, because if I don't put it on my to-do list, that will not get done and my plants will die.
Yeah. But it's like for a neurotypical person,
they will just remember that that's normal.
Things that you do.
Yeah.
And I always get super stressed out if I know that I've got a few things to do and it's not written down. And it's like, it's not even like a lot of things that need to be done. It'll be like a normal day, like, I've got to go for a doctor's appointment, but I also know that I'm going out that night, so then I know I've got to shower and wash my hair, and I've got to do my makeup.
Yeah, fake tan.
I've got to do all of this, and I get so like cripply
it's overwhelmed
by like 5 things that I need to do, but it's just because it's all in my mind. As soon as I write it down, I'm like, okay, well,
it feels like a release.
Yeah, I can manage this. But when it's in my mind, it's like, oh my god, well, I've got to do this at this time and then this. Where am I going to fit it all in? And then I get stressed out.
I'd love for some sort of animation to be created, or I don't know what it actually feels like in those moments where you have like 500 things to do. I genuinely feel like my brain is like about to explode. That's the only way that I can describe the feeling. And you're like, and then you just like, I can't. There's so much to do. And in actual fact, there is really, if you actually write it down, it's like, I can actually do this. But then I write it down, and then I'm looking at this list, and I'm like, oh my god, where do I even start?
Where do I begin?
Fuck.
But then, do you know when you get so overwhelmed that you actually just can't do it?
Do nothing. It's like what we spoke about before. It's like decision paralysis, where you just sat there and you're like, well, I've got so many things that I need to do, so I'm just going to do nothing at all.
Yeah, and you just sit there and you're like, oh my god, I'm like so overwhelmed. I can't get up off the sofa. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't do any of it.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But then, like, in reality, it's like 4 things that need to be...
It's 4 things.
It's like 4 things.
Pretty easy things as well. But they feel like the biggest things ever. And I think that's where, where it's very different with men and women, because I don't think that men experience that as much.
I think it comes back to the whole masking thing, though, doesn't it? I think, like, the reason that women's symptoms are so internalised is because of the societal pressures on women. So we're expected to be organised, to be polite, to be social, and that's why we become over-organised. Why rejection sensitivity dysphoria is so much, because we're told that we have to be people pleasers, and we have to fit into this mould, and ultimately it just leads to being exhausted because you are pretending to be something that you're not, and pretending to be something that you're not is so mentally
tiring.
Draining. Like the social battery for me, I know if I'm like out all day speaking to people and I'm pretending to be someone else, I will come home and I will not be able to speak for the whole night. I will not be able to like do anything because I'm just mentally drained from like hiding so many different aspects of myself.
And I think it's also important to talk about how difficult it is now. I suppose it's becoming better, but to be diagnosed as a woman when all we've ever heard about is ADHD in men. And then the sort of question that comes with that, which definitely is something that I struggled with, well, I can't possibly have ADHD because I'm not, I wasn't hyperactive at school and I did well. And it took a really long time for me to actually accept that I do have ADHD and I'm allowed to have it. It almost felt like sounds really weird to say, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to have ADHD because it was this male diagnosis. It was this thing that only men or boys suffered with. So I couldn't possibly have it.
Yeah. And you think as well, you should have been diagnosed with it at childhood. Like majority of people, majority men who I knew had ADHD, had it from school. Like they had known their whole lives they were diagnosed with it when they were a child. But I guess that's also a whole nother thing as well, is like why majority of women are diagnosed so much later in life. Like, it's so rare, I think, to meet a woman who was diagnosed in school.
That'd be so
with
interesting
ADHD.
to know, wouldn't it? And it's even like when you meet guys now that you know, like for example, my brother and guys that I've dated in the past who are like, oh, like I definitely have ADHD. Like I was told throughout my whole childhood that I had ADHD. I've just not been assessed for it. But I would have never gone through my whole childhood.
No.
It would have just been you're emotional, you're sensitive. And I always felt so different to my friends as well. And I feel like I grew up my whole life feeling like, why am I so different? Like, why can all my friends regulate their emotions? Why don't my friends make ridiculous lies up and I make these weird lies and I know for a fact that they don't lie to me? And you grow up feeling different. And I think that's the hardest thing. And then you become an adult and you're like, wait, there's actually an answer for all of this.
I think, I resonate so much with just feeling like I was not the same, like not belonging, and just feeling like never understood why all my friends in school, it felt like they went through their GCSEs and their A levels like so easily, and I felt like I had to try 10 times harder to just be to the same point they were at. And I was always like, why am I so weird? Like, why am I making up lies? Why am I doing all this stuff? And like, I'd get home and I'd sit in bed and think like, I am such a awful person because of all of this stupid stuff that I do for attention, and be like, I just wish I wasn't like that. And that also just led to me having so low self-esteem and hating myself because I felt so different from everyone else, and I could never understand why I was so different. And then getting a diagnosis was like, oh my God, it's an answer for brain's not different, but it's just, it works in a different way to everyone else.
And like we've already spoken about before, like the right people will ultimately get it, and you find your people. And we were speaking about this a few months ago at work because we've got another friend at work who is also diagnosed ADHD, and we're all like really close friends. And I feel like the older I'm getting, and now since I've had my diagnosis, I've realised that my closest friends are often my friends that do have ADHD, and now I sort of attract people with ADHD.
Yeah, I do think it's a thing. There must be a study out there somewhere, but everyone I speak to who is neurodivergent, they're like, all of my close friends, like friendships, are people who are neurodivergent. I'm collecting neurodivergent people like Pokemon at this point. Every single person who I'm like, oh yeah, I like them. They're like, okay, they are ADHD or autism or something.
Basically,
like that.
Me. You took me under your wing. It was like,
maybe it's like your brain's at a different frequency.
It must be,
and it just like clicks, and you're like, okay, like I can say the most outrageous things, and you're not going to sit there and be like,
no, it's okay. I say pretty outrageous things.
I don't think you sit there and think, oh my God, she's being so much. This is so embarrassing. It's just like you'll just say something even more outrageous back, and I'm like, okay,
it's actually fine.
And that kind of makes you feel better. So I think it's
finding your people,
definitely.
Okay. Thinking that whole time, I was like, how are we going to go on this? How are we going to go? I feel like we need to like, how we could. Okay, should we maybe?
I'll do the last bit.
Okay,
I think a lot of women feel broken. That's really like, I think, a late diagnosis, a lot of the stigma around it leads to women feeling broken, you know, like for so long I felt like I was a failure. I thought I was lazy. I thought I was selfish and all of that. And it was all these words that I had put onto myself, and that just led to me feeling so shit about myself all the time. And then having the diagnosis is like, it gives you a bit of an understanding, but for so many years of masking and pretending to be something you're not, you know, it leads you feeling like, who am I as a person? And it's no surprise why so many women struggle, because obviously, yes, men with ADHD do struggle, but if you've been told that you've had ADHD when you're younger, you've had a lot more time to put those strategies in place.
And I think you accept yourself more. And also, you know, I don't know, I feel like with guys with ADHD, it's like my brother, for example, he knows he has it. He openly says, I know I have ADHD. I've struggled with it my whole life. Because I've said to him, look, I feel like you should go and get a diagnosis. I feel like you benefit from medication. And my parents have said, you know, the same to him. But he was like, but I've lived my whole life with this. Like, this has been my life for 31, 32 years. And I know what I need. Like, he has his routines, he's very much like, he has to go to the gym, he has to follow his sleep, he has to sleep at a certain time, and like, yes, I would say that he could maybe benefit from it, but in his eyes, it's like, well, this is me, this is all I've ever known. Whereas I feel like, you know, we haven't had that, because we've, you know, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder and then OCD, and then finally it's like, oh wait, actually, this is ADHD, this has been ADHD all along, and I've never known how the coping strategies for ADHD, because it wouldn't have ever even occurred to me that I would have had ADHD. So yeah, I feel like where was I going with this? I feel like there was something you were saying there was on this 1 minute. Yeah, I feel like definitely with younger boys, it is something that they've always known that they've had, been able to cope with, whereas for us, it's almost like, I feel like my life is just beginning.
Yeah.
And I remember when someone said that to me when I was in the pub a few months ago, and I was talking to my friend about how I was going on medication, and she was like, sorry, I just want to say that I'm not listening to your conversation, but I am kind of listening, and I know that you're going on ADHD medication, and I just want to tell you that this is the start of the rest of your life. And I completely agree with that. Yeah. It is.
I genuinely feel like that as well. Like, it almost feels like my life before my diagnosis and getting medication was like a whole separate thing. You know, it's like you being diagnosed with other things. It's like having anxiety, having depression, struggling my whole life, and thinking, you know, none of the things that I'm doing is working. And then finally being told, okay, you've got ADHD, is like, wow, you know, it's a new chapter, it's a new way of thinking about yourself, and it's almost like having to start life again, because you're having to build all the foundations. Like, I need to forget everything that I was doing before, because that wasn't actually helping me, and now focus on new things that is specific to ADHD.
Yeah.
So that's probably why it's a lot harder, or why it feels like we have to do a lot more work now.
Yeah.
Because we're only just finding out.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have those strategies in place.
Yeah.
But even since knowing, I'd be like, my life is completely different to as it was before.
And you know, the biggest thing as well, I think it actually is like forgiving your younger self. And that was because it's weird that you've brought up this lying thing, because that's something that I lied about some pretty weird things when I was younger for attention. And I remember bringing it up in therapy. This is before I was diagnosed with ADHD. And she was like, look, Emily, you were just looking for attention. And now I know that is so linked to ADHD, and it's like I can finally forgive myself for so many of the things that I did, for job hopping and like wondering, why can't I keep a job down for 6 months, and like all my friends can stay in these careers and be really satisfied? Why do I want to move around the world? Why can't it be happy in one place? Why do I buy a dog and then decide I don't want the dog? Like, do you know what I mean? And now I look back at all of like my 20s and, you know, my teenage years, and I'm like, I just forgive her. And I feel like before I felt so guilty, and I feel like all of that is kind of gone now, because I know that there was a reason behind a lot of the things I was doing.
You almost go through a mourning process,
Yeah.
I think. Like, there's a lot of times where I do think, you know, okay, if I had known that I had ADHD earlier, my life would have been a lot different. And I had a lot of grief for little me in school.
Absolutely.
And everything that I went through, and thinking, okay, maybe life would have been different. But on the flip side of things, you know,
We wouldn't have had this
we
podcast.
wouldn't have this podcast. And,
Yeah.
you know, I know now, and in comparison to a lot of other women, some women aren't diagnosed until their 50s and
Exactly.
things like that. You know, it's still a bit rubbish, but it could be a lot worse. And I'm happy that I finally have the answers now.
Me too. And I think that's a pretty good way to end the podcast.
It is a good way to end.
And if you are a woman and you're listening to this and you're thinking about going to get a diagnosis, then I think that this is definitely a reason to go and do it.
And don't compare yourself to
To what you think it should be. Yeah.
exactly.